What's up, everybody? I wanted to do a quick tour of our home photography studio. I wanted to do this quick tour just to kind of give you a little overview of our photography process for the clothing shots. And the reason for this is I just wanted to see if there's anything that we do as far as photography, as far as the studio environment, if there's hopefully anything you can just take away from this. And the reason why I say just take away from this, tips or anything like that, is because you're going to see that we have professional studio equipment, strobes, big soft boxes. I have a soft box that's practically as tall as I am. I'm going to point those out to say that you don't need equipment like this, but hopefully from the process, the position of the lights, maybe how we shoot into the computer, things like that, you can just find some of the techniques or processes helpful. Take a little bit away from it, maybe interject a little bit of that process or technique into your shooting. So that's the reason why I want to do this video. My wife and I do professional portrait work. I do headshots and product photography. We do newborns and families, and that's why we have a home studio. So what I'm going to show you first, what I think is probably one of the most important aspects of what you can do if you don't already have one of these things, is get a tripod. Not putting your camera, your DSLR, your point and shoots, your iPhone, it doesn't make a difference. On a tripod is basically you're going to be asking for what we call camera shake. In photography, a lot of times when you think is good light or bright enough light, usually isn't. And when you get into lower light situations, even if you think the light is adequate, it's usually not, and the lower light situations will slow the shutter down, even in your iPhone. And if you're trying to handhold a slow shutter when taking the photographs in lower light, you're pretty much asking for camera shake, which means you're pretty much asking for a bit blurry photos. Camera shake is a little bit of fuzziness that you see in the pictures, and you can't fix that in post. So that's why it's very important to get your iPhone, your point and shoot, your DSLR, whatever it may be, on a tripod. To show you, I shoot with a studio tripod. It's a big, heavy tripod. I'm not taking this thing anywhere. It is a studio tripod. The reason why I'm showing you this is just to show you that I fix my position on a tripod. Whenever I take product shots or shots of the clothing, I don't have to touch the camera at all when taking the photos. It eliminates camera shake altogether. Obviously, you don't need one of these big tripods. I've got just a classic 3-legged tripod right here. This thing's probably 20 years old. As you can see, I've got a point and shoot on it. I was doing a little video work with this point and shoot the other day, and this tripod, any kind of tripod, but this is, even if it's an old tripod like this, is perfect because it's going to eliminate camera shake. Right here, we just got this a week ago, an Amazon $20 tripod. You can see that it's the quality's not the best. It's if I try to put it through its paces, it's probably not going to last, but it's 20 bucks. Up here, I've got a smartphone mount for tripod, so I can essentially attach my smartphone in here, and it attaches to the tripod. And now I've got the ability to put my smartphone on a tripod, so I can eliminate camera shake. So if there's going to be anything that I would recommend, if you don't have your camera, DSLR, iPhone, whatever it is, on a tripod, get a tripod. The second thing is if you're using your smartphone and you're taking the photographs, put it on a tripod, use the self-timer. When you use the self-timer, even if it's a 3-second timer, when you touch the shutter, it gives you 3 seconds, it gives the camera 3 seconds to settle and take the photograph without you having to touch it, which is essentially going to eliminate camera shake altogether. Even when you have your camera on a tripod and you just tap the screen to take the picture, that's still a little bit of camera shake, and you're going to see that in the photo. If you have a DSLR, I've got one of these guys. This is essentially a remote, a generic remote from Amazon. I've had it for years. It still works better than or just as good as the brand names. Plugs into my camera, my Nikon, and whenever I want to take a picture, I can just press the button and it snaps a photo. Again, I'm not touching the camera, so I'm eliminating camera shake. A lot of people don't know that if you have, at least I know with the iPhones and the iPad, if you use the headphones with the volume up and volume down and a microphone in the middle, if you plug that into the phone while taking the pictures, when you press the button in the middle, that'll take the picture. So it is essentially like a smartphone or an iPhone cable release like this. So that's a nice trick. Plug your headphones in with the remote, press the button, and that'll take the picture. Your smartphone's on a tripod, you're going to eliminate camera shake. The next thing you're gonna see, we've got this stage right here, and there's gonna be two things that I want to talk about as far as tips and tricks from you're gonna get from what we do with the form on the stage. So the first thing is, as far as the photos are concerned, I think consistency is key. We use the form and we use the mannequin leg, and so which basically, needless to say, whenever we shoot a product, if it's a form, I'm putting a shirt on, I'm taking it off, I'm putting a shirt on, I'm taking it off, I'm putting a dress on, I'm taking it off, I'm putting a skirt on, I'm taking it off. And each time, I don't want that form to move. I don't want the form to move because I have the form in a specific spot. When I'm taking the pictures, I'm not touching the camera. I don't want the form to move so that I don't have to do anything or moving with the camera because I didn't put the form in the same spot. Same goes with the leg. So what I essentially did to ensure that it's in the exact same spot every time, so that when the customer is toggling through the photos on Facebook, the only thing that's changing is the product and the photos aren't getting all this essentially weird movement, because every time you take a picture, the form or the leg is a smidgen, an inch or two to the left and right in a different spot, and they're gonna notice that in the photographs. It's small, but it's something that will take their attention from the clothing, and I want their attention on the clothing the entire time. So essentially what I did to ensure that the products stay in the same spot is, with the leg, you can see, I drilled 2 holes, stuck 2 pegs in the bottom, epoxied them in, and then in our floor, in our kind of stage floor, which is essentially just a backdrop with some plywood underneath, I drilled 2 holes, and that of course coincide with the pegs in the form. So now whenever I put a legging on the mannequin leg, I can set this in the hole, and now when I take this shot, it's going to be in the exact same spot every time. It's going to be the same angle, it's going to be the same distance to the camera, it's going to be in the same spot every time. When I go and lift it up, I can essentially lift it up, put a new legging on, and put it right back into the exact same spot, take another picture, keep going. It speeds up the process, and the leg, I know, is going to be in the exact same spot every time. Same with the form. All I did with the form though was I just have screws in the legs, and I essentially, when I go to ready to take all the photos that I would need the form, I, as you can see, mark the floor. So maybe that one's hard to see. Where the form goes, I move it to the correct spot, and then I screw in the screws that I leave there. And now the form does not leave that spot at all. When I put a shirt on, take the picture, I can go over there and take the shirt off, and I don't have to worry about accidentally moving the form when I take the shirt off. So now when I take another picture, the form is in the exact same spot. When customers toggle through the photographs, the only thing that's changing is the clothing. It helps with consistency and just a better visual when the customers are toggling through the photo. Next thing is how we get the photos from our DSLR to the computer. What we do is we tether from our camera to the computer. And tethering is essentially just connecting your camera via USB to your computer. There's a program called Lightroom that's $10 a month, well worth it, and that allows you to tether your camera to the computer. I'm almost positive that regardless if you even have a very entry-level DSLR, you'd still be able to tether your camera to the computer, maybe even a point and shoot. But the benefit is, when I tether my camera to the computer, every single time I take a photo, it goes right into the computer. The pros of that are, if you've noticed when you take photographs of colors like oranges and blues and reds, a lot of the times they become oversaturated. It's essentially a digital camera thing, and by tethering from the photo or from the camera to the computer, once it hits the computer, I can easily just kind of adjust the you know, saturation of the oranges or the blues, eyeballing the product to get the colors just right, and then upload it to social media. So tethering makes it super easy to do versus taking the memory card out and sticking it into the computer. It is essentially just camera, USB. Like I said, I've got a full frame. You could be doing this with an entry-level DSLR. So just the fact that I've got a full frame with a long lens does not mean that this is what you need for tethering. $15 cable, I think, from Amazon. That's like a 40-foot USB over to my computer. I use a program called Capture One to tether. Like I said, that runs $10 a month, well worth it. And now all I have to do to take the photograph is click a button and it snaps a photo. Now that's, there we go. Right into the computer. There we go. That might be really bright. Either way, you get the idea. So essentially, I press a button on the computer. It takes the photo. That way, I can just take the photo, change out the form or the product on the form. Press the button on the computer, takes the photo, change out the product on the form, and then, you know, over and over and over again. It makes the process much faster. So the last thing that I want to talk to you about, which I'm going to go into it a little bit now, but I'm going to get into it a little bit more in depth in another video, and that's color of light. It's essentially the color of light that's coming from your lights, your light bulbs, is going to affect the white balance of the product, which is going to affect the colors of the product. Greens will look blues, oranges will look more reds will look more oranges, things like that. If you have continuous light that you got from, say, Amazon or something like that, or B&H or Adorama or places like that, if you use small flash, if you use big flash like this, they're gonna have a certain color temperature, a Kelvin. My strobes right here, they're all essentially daylight balance strobes. So the color of light coming out of that is a little bit more cooler, a little bit closer to you, essentially what you would see outside. The colors tend to render more correctly. I have these on for the video's sake, but the studio lights, or just the lights that are in the ceiling in our studio, they're more of a soft white light bulb that you would find in just your household lamp. So they're gonna, if you can notice in the video, the color coming out of that is a little bit yellow. When we shoot the clothing, I turn those off and just shoot with the flashes. And I do that because if I leave the yellow lights on and the flash, it's going to essentially contaminate the kind of, you know, color, or confuse the camera's auto white balance, because it's going to essentially two temperature colors, and the colors on the actual clothing are not going to render as accurately. So to eliminate any kind of like color contamination, I shut the studio lights off and just use the flash, so that the colors on the clothing are going to render a little bit more correctly. I've got these daylight balanced lights that you can see right here, so that of course when I do the LuLaRoe clothing at night and I shut the ceiling lights off, I can still see in the room. But they are daylight balanced. They're the same color temperature or Kelvin that my studio strobes are putting off, so they're not going to affect the clothing color at all. And then I guess the last thing that I wanted to talk about, and I'm glad that I didn't forget, the distance that I put the form and the leg when taking the photos is about a good, 5 feet to the backdrop. Essentially from here to the backdrop is a good 5 feet. I did that very much on purpose because I don't know if you noticed in some of the photographs, the forms or legs, or even if you just drape it over the form, or anyone that especially just hangs the products on hangers and hangs them on the wall, when you get the subject of the photograph close to the background like that, most of the time you're going to get unattractive shadows, basically. I say unattractive shadows just because in product photography like this, when you're trying to get somebody to focus on the product, you don't necessarily want shadows. If you have lights on either side, then you're going to get shadows on either side behind this product. So I move the form and the leg placement further from the backdrop. And by doing that, I'm eliminating any shadow on the background. That's why when you look in our photographs, there's no shadow back there. This is one of those things that I'm saying you don't have to do, but I also have two lights aiming at the background to make the background lighter in our photos. I want the background to be a bit lighter, so I have the leg away from the wall to reduce shadow, but I also then aimed lights at the background when taking the pictures, so that in the final picture the background is just brighter than if I didn't have those lights. For now, that's about it. Hopefully you got something from this. Hopefully you get something from our process. The studio strobes, the lights on the background, things like that you don't need. You can do this with constant lights, from Amazon, but there's just key things to note, like the color of the light, where you place the light. You can notice that I have the light shooting at the form on an angle. I don't put it directly in front. I don't have it very close to it. If you look at the light in relation to the camera, I've got the light there, and the camera over there. It's off to the side, so that when the light coming from this side hits here, it's going to create a little bit, basically some shadow over here. I have another light to just kind of put some light over here, but by putting some shadow here and having the light here, you can still see the pattern, but it's actually going to give dimension. So it's going to give people a better, basically idea of what it looks like on a person, because you kind of give it dimension with the shadow. That's really just placement of light. I just move the light around and watch the form until I see the light move, and then the shadow, and now that's where I know to put the light. Hopefully you got just something from our process. If you have any questions, if you want to know a little bit more in detail about something that I went into, if maybe I didn't explain something clear enough, something like that, just leave a comment or PM me and I'll answer it and go into a little bit more detail. I'm going to do another video, like I said, that's a little bit more in depth in color, temperature, white balance, light bulb color, and also another video going over the various options as far as cameras that you have. There's lots of options out there that as far as cameras, as far as DSLR, smaller DSLRs, point and shoot, GoPro, but I wouldn't use a GoPro at all, so that's kind of not even point and shoot. So hopefully I'll have that video out within the next day or two, okay? And like I said, if you have any questions or anything like that, just leave it in the comments, and hopefully this was helpful.